It's been rebuilt.
Yes.
It's been rebuilt.
All right.
It's an important water resource pond for the fire department.
John, what creek is that?
Hmm?
What body of water serves that?
Is there a church?
I can't remember. It's got to be probably some range of it.
Yeah, and that,
Yeah, it's Mill Creek.
That's right, it is.
they were good. Until they moved into this.
Which
I just did. Thank you.
Angie, before we start, Angie is using a new high-tech, super fancy software to do our meeting minutes to save some staff time.
Oh.
You need to speak into the mics. I say this at every
Yes,
board
ma'am.
meeting, and I'm serious because we had an issue with it. Pick the mic up, talk into it.
And no talking over top of one another.
Oh, that's no fun.
And I'll add one thing.
Testing.
I want my own
Yeah,
personal.
I know. I'm going.
That one's already working. Oh, well.
They're all working.
We ready?
No.
No. She's got to go around and, well, knucklehead.
Mario, give us your microphone.
I've already turned it on.
Is my microphone on? Can
All
someone
righty, I'd
confirm
like to
that?
call the meeting to order. It's April 24th, and I'd like to go around, and I'm Danny Sharp. If you would just share your names for the record, we'd appreciate that. David, would you start with us?
Oh, sure. I thought you might start with Brian. I'm David Neal, par excellence. Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
I'm Bill Shy. It looks like shoe, but it's shy. I'm bashful.
What's the origin of your name?
Journal.
Okay, there we go.
Jamin.
Maury Gramling.
And I'm Matt Horn, hardly excellence, but just kind of mediocre.
All righty, great. Thank you, guys. And Kayla's going to be serving as our staff today and helping us understand this variance. I'm trying to follow a script here. Let's see, and we have Brandon, who did some great training for our group maybe a month and a half ago or so. Brandon Freeman, who's going to be our attorney, sitting with us today. We're grateful for your presence. We find that that's been helpful in the past to have an attorney here to help us think through that. I'd like to just take a minute, if I could, to have some silence, just a minute of silence. Try to collect our thoughts, collect our spirits a bit. Thank you. I'm a pastor by trade, so I can out-silence anybody. I love silence.
Except the social worker.
Yeah, I don't know. I can sit in silence for a long time in a meeting.
Contemplative.
We have some minutes from the previous. First of all, I need to certify our quorum. So we definitely have a quorum here. We have 5 people. We need 4 out of 5 to be, or we need a 4/5 vote to actually rule on any kind of evidentiary hearing that we'd have, and we have that here. I would like to see if we could have a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from, what was this, January 23rd? I'm sorry, I'm
Danny.
getting ahead of myself.
Danny.
To adopt the agenda first. So could I have a motion to adopt the agenda that is presented to us? So Maury has made the motion. Is there a second?
Sure.
Second.
Yes.
Great. David is seconded. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So ordered. Okay, we have any need for swearing in anyone? I don't think we do we?
Yeah.
William.
Okay, we have to.
And we've got Maury.
I need to.
No, you're okay.
All righty.
Well, if you do, I do.
So
Yeah, you do.
Angie will help us with that
Yeah.
process of swearing in our
She's
new
bringing
board
the Bible,
members.
so you don't have to get up. Up?
Yeah.
Were you doing it individually as a group?
Yeah, I was going to say.
We're going to get all 3. We've got to get all 3.
Oh,
What is that book?
And this is a tiny red Bible.
has a different word on it. Color Max is the name.
Just barely.
Okay.
I got it.
I'm gonna start, if you'll both, all three say your name, and then we'll go forward. I
Maury Gramling,
Matt Horn.
do solemnly swear or affirm that you will support and maintain the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of your offices as regular and alternate member of the Board of Adjustment. So help you God.
I will.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Signatures
You're on the hook
here.
for 3
You
years.
just barely skimmed by. Just barely skimmed by.
Oh, yeah.
You're officially official. Thank you.
Did you show them the secret handshake?
That's
Okay, that's later, okay.
So you guys have been presented the minutes from the last board meeting. Are there any questions or corrections?
No.
Could I have a motion to receive these minutes as adopted, as given to us?
So moved.
Okay, so Matt has made
Jump
the
in.
motion. Is there a
Jump in.
second? Bill's seconded. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, so ordered.
You can jump in anytime.
I'm going to read this introduction to the quasi-judicial decisions that I was given, and this is in the appendix of our Bible for Board of Adjustments right here. We can now open up the evidentiary hearing of VA 2025-01. It is the applicant has requested a variance, and the property is located at
205
205 Virginia Road, Montreat. This variance hearing requires a four-fifths vote of the board to grant this variance. The decision will be made by simple majority vote on the board. And am I right that every part of findings of facts has to be voted in favor of it? Is that right, for variance?
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarity here. For this script, the first option would apply. So a 4/5 vote of the board is required to grant.
I said majority. I read the wrong thing.
Well,
Okay.
I think
Thank you.
you read both. So you're
Yeah.
right the first time, but the second one doesn't apply here.
Thank you.
And just this is a very technical sort of distinction. A lot of what you all hear are quasi-judicial matters. Variances are a subset of quasi-judicial matters. Variances are what require the 4/5 supermajority, and a lot of your quasi-judicial matters, like a special use permit, would only require a supermajority. So
Yeah.
we'll make sure that we keep those straight.
Yeah. Okay, and so each of the findings of fact, do each of them have to be approved before the variance can be granted?
The board needs to make findings of fact before it grants the variance. So that's a part of it. Each one of those findings of facts doesn't necessarily need to be voted on.
Okay.
The overall matter needs to be voted on, and then
Okay.
those findings of facts, the board will have an opportunity to help draft an order that includes those findings of fact, and we'll vote on that order. Now, I also know that it has been the habit of this board to go through the findings of fact and handle them individually. I think that's a good practice.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's required, but I think it's a good idea. And since it's been the habit of this board, I think you can continue doing it.
Thank you. Helpful. So this is a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. This means it's like a court hearing. State law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decisions, and these rules are different from other types of land use decisions like rezoning cases. The board's discretion is limited. This board must base its decisions upon competent, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. A quasi-judicial decision is not a popularity contest. It is a decision constrained by the standards and the regulation and based on the facts presented. We don't have any witnesses speaking, I don't think. We have a person who's going to share from the perspective of the applicant. Participation is limited. This meeting is open to the public. Everyone's welcome to watch. I won't talk about standing, and we don't have any of that necessary right now. So we come to the need for disclosure, and so the parties to this case are entitled to a impartial board. A board member may not participate in this hearing if she or he has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close relationship with an affected person. And so do any of us as board members have any partiality to disclose and recusal to offer? No? Okay, good. No objection coming forward, no offering of any ex parte communication. I think we're now ready to proceed with Kayla's movement of sharing with us the applicant's application.
Before we do that, we do need to swear in. Before we do that, we do need to swear in anybody who will be speaking on this case, so myself and the applicant.
Okay, great.
You don't need to.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, Kayla, the floor is yours.
Danny, before we move on to the zoning administrator's presentation, I just wanted to confirm that you asked the board members if there's any ex parte communication.
She did, he did.
He did? Okay.
Come on.
It's after 5 o'clock, we're struggling. Okay.
Ready?
Josh, can you bring the PowerPoint up, please?
Question? I'm on page 41, and the ex parte communication also is whether or not we have made site visits.
Any what?
Site visits.
I
We
haven't
were
seen-
enjoined to make a site visit prior to this, and some of us may have done so. Is that something we need to report? In,
Yeah, anyone who's made a site visit should report that to the board.
Okay, so let's
Did
jump
not
back.
know that. That's news.
Yeah,
I didn't.
we've not
Yeah.
done that ever.
Okay,
I mean,
so
we usually go, but
Yeah.
those of us who made site visits, could we
show of hands.
let them know?
Well, I have a question about that. A site visit needs to be an official site visit because I drive by the house every day.
That's probably
I
as
think
close.
that you can, if you disclose your general familiarity with the property, this is Montreat is a small town, so people are going to be aware of properties. I think if you are upfront and open about the knowledge that you have about the property, that is sufficient.
So Matt, Danny, David, and Bill, you guys did do a site
Yes.
visit.
Yeah. Yes.
Mari, you're just generally familiar. Is that?
but I did just what Marty did. I drove by. That was the extent of my
That's-
site.
Yeah, I drove by and stopped and looked, but I didn't get out.
I'll just note that.
Matt, you get the red sucker for finding out about ex
Good
parte
job, Matt.
communication. Good
Do I
job
get it
there.
before the end of the meeting or after?
Give him
We'll,
the
we'll have your
attaboy.
reward later. Okay, now we're ready.
If I may ask one question?
Yes.
To the board members, anyone who has made a site visit or visited this site, would you please disclose if you believe that any of your visits or anything you observed at the site would cause you to have a fixed opinion of this matter before hearing evidence about the same?
It would not.
No. Can't really see it.
Okay.
All right.
We've got two panels up here for you to look at. If you can't see over there, maybe you can see Matt. You won't be able to see that one.
I got it.
Over there. Matt, over there.
If I may
Please.
just make one more observation. in looking at the introduction, we did skip over the witness provision because it does not, we do not have a crowded room there for those who cannot see. From a technical standpoint, Kayla is a witness.
Okay.
In this proceeding, and anyone who speaks will be sworn in and have to give that testimony. So I just want to read that very short sentence. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and standards, not personal preference or opinion. Participation is limited. This meeting is open to the public. Everyone is welcome to watch. Parties withstanding have rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Parties are limited to the applicant, the local government, and individuals who can show they will suffer special damages. Other individuals may serve as witnesses when called by the board. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not opinions. For certain topics, the board needs to hear opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about increased traffic. Individuals providing expert opinion must be qualified as experts and provide factual evidence upon which they base their opinion.
And I will say for the record, both myself and the applicant, Wade Burns, were sworn in. Okay, so good evening, Chairman, Board of Adjustment. My name is Kayla DiChristina, and I am the Town of Montreat Zoning Administrator. I request to submit into evidence the staff report and the presentation. Is that acceptable to the board?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. All right, so before you tonight, you have a variance request, VA 2025-01. Next slide, please. The subject property is located on the western side of Virginia Road at the intersection of Virginia Road and Alabama Terrace. It's addressed as 205 Virginia Road. It's owned by Richard Hitch. It's 0.28 acres and is currently zoned R2, which is the residential zoning district, and contains an existing dwelling. There's an aerial of the subject property on the slide before you. Next slide, please. The application was submitted by Wade Burns on behalf of the property owner. The applicant requests two variances, one to section 502.5 of the Montreat zoning ordinance. That variance request is to reduce the front setback required on the southern side of the subject property from 30 feet to 23.4 feet. And the second variance request is to section 502.81 of the Montreat zoning ordinance to reduce the side setback required on the northern side of the subject property from 10 feet to 9 feet. I do want to note that section 502 of the zoning ordinance actually includes two sections, 502.5. The first 502.5 that's written on this page of the ordinance is in regards to minimum lot width, and the second is to minimum front yard. So for purposes of this presentation and this variance request, references to section 502.5 will mean the second 502.5, which refers to minimum front yard. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next slide, please. This is the site plan that is provided by the applicant. I've highlighted where the two variances are, one on the north side, which is on the top, and then one on the southern side, which is on the bottom. You all received this site plan in your packets. Next slide, please. So this map shows the zoning of the subject property and the surrounding area. Again, the subject property is zoned R2 and currently has a single-family dwelling. Per the Buncombe County property record card, the single-family dwelling was built in 1916. The subject property is bound on three sides by rights-of-way. To the south and east is Virginia Road with property zoned R2 containing single-family dwellings beyond. To the west is property zoned R2 with a single-family dwelling. To the north is right-of-way with property zoned R1 containing single-family dwellings beyond. As I said earlier, the subject property is 0.28 acres. Let's see. And the subject property is considered a double frontage lot abutting more than two streets. as I said, it abuts Virginia Road to the south and east, and then on the north side, there's also dedicated right-of-way. So this lot is subject to the setback provisions of the R2 zoning district and Section 608 of the Montreat zoning ordinance. The south and east side of the subject property are subject to a 30-foot setback, and the north and west sides are subject to a 10-foot setback. Next slide, please. This image shows the topography of the subject property. The subject property is outlined in red, and then you can see everything that's around it. The subject property has a slope of 21.56% and slopes downward from north to south. And just a quick refresher on how to read these topo maps. When topo lines, so those orange lines, are closer together, that indicates steeper topography changes, and when they're farther apart, that indicates more gradual topography changes. Next slide, please. All right, so as I said, the subject property is bound on 3 sides by rights-of-way. Virginia Road is a public road maintained by the town of Montreat, and that is to the south and east, and then there's also right-of-way to the north. So I've provided some pictures of the existing right-of-way of Virginia Road to the south and east of the subject property. These are both in your staff report and on the screen before you. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the right-of-way to the north of the subject property. You can see there's a little box with an arrow that points to the subject property. This area to the north is a dedicated right-of-way. It doesn't have an open road in it, but it is a dedicated right-of-way. Next slide, please. The subject property, outlined in red, does not have any streams or special flood hazard areas on it. I do want to note that the subject property will be required to comply with stormwater management measures as stated in the ordinance, depending on what their final development scenario is. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so the Board of Adjustment must find that the request meets the following findings on the screen to grant the variance. At the request of staff, please use the template language found at the end of the staff reports in your packet so that the record clearly states the decision behind each finding. The motion to make these findings can be done after each finding or for the findings as a whole, but the member that makes the motion needs to state each finding and the reason behind each decision. So as we've talked about in our training, what you guys are finding and where that information is in the evidentiary record. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? No. I think we can move on.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Burns, would you please come forward and help us understand how you see things?
Yes. I'm passing out, actual archaic, they have 11 pieces. But I'll cover these as we get into them. And I would like first introduction. I didn't know everybody here when I came in. My name is Wade DuBose Burns. This summer marks my 80th year of coming to Montreat. I've only lived here full-time for 26 years. Most everybody that was somebody when I came up here is gone to glory now. But I have...
Mr. Burns, could you speak more in the microphone? I think we'd hear you better. Thank you.
I've been a licensed architect for 51 years, and my work has been primarily for mayors and town councils of 5 cities, and then my primary residence in Atlanta for 30 years, before my 26 years here. And most of the work has been in urban planning. 60 years ago, I was completing my first year at the College of Architecture and Urban Studies at Virginia Tech, and that's where I got my 5-year degree. Regarding the purpose of this application, Reverend Dooley Hitch owned this original Montreat house, built in 16 or 17 of the previous century. He, retired preacher, he restored it to the nines. I mean, just it's solid cherry floors, rebuilt everything, nice kitchen, bedroom, bath, and so forth. But it's only one bedroom and a guest room. And so when he passed and his son Richard and Debbie inherited the property, they live in Texas and come here occasionally. Now they've reached a point in life they would like to move here permanently, and they need more space. They came to me, and the challenge was this small house was perfect, and to add what they needed to do would mean tearing up things. And so you have before you the solution to this. Keep what's perfect and add the square footage they needed so they'd have closet space and guest room space because they've got other generations primarily in Charlotte, and that's a 2-hour drive, and they need to be able to house them there. And so it's the addition of a 2-bedroom house with its own living space, and the one variance for a 1-foot encroachment in the setback is for the wife and her master closet, which takes precedent over all other matters before you.
Amen and amen.
So this has been designed to fit on the property as best as could be done. It's only a 1/4 acre lot, but it's on a large parcel of land because of the right-of-way around it, which goes from 108 feet wide to 50 feet wide and so forth. And the road is a good distance from the house, so that the purpose of our zoning setbacks is to preserve the character and quality of the community and the spaces between residences and the space between the residences and the public movement spaces. And that's why we have them. Montreat is unique in that it's a bunch of curves and hills rather than straight, platted out subdivisions. And so for the findings of fact, and from standpoint of expertise, I've served on either the Planning Commission or the Board of Adjustment for more than 1/3 of the time I've lived in Montreat. And before this, I was vice chair of the Zoning Appeals Board of Fulton County, which is Atlanta. Also 7 years in the Urban Design Commission of Atlanta. And also chairman of the Venue Review Board for the City of Atlanta, all this simultaneous, getting ready for the Olympics in '96. I mentioned those things as it relates to possible expertise as a witness. Findings of fact. First, an unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. The 10-foot setback, the existing house is not parallel to the property line, and fitting in the much-needed closet storage space requires a small corner of the closet to encroach 1 foot into the side setback. The closet location is where the closet can fit into the existing floor plan of this very old house. You will see in other findings the small corner of the closet will not impact the neighboring properties in any discernible way. The 30-foot setback. The new addition has been designed to preserve the space and views of the old house and runs parallel to the south property line, but because the southeastern property line is at a near 45-degree angle, fitting in the new addition requires a corner to encroach 6 feet 6 inches in 30-foot setback. You will see in other findings the southwest corner line is not parallel to Virginia Road. The existing house corner comes 2.2 feet into the 30-foot setback, and yet that corner is 42 feet from Virginia Road. The additional corner requested will come 6.6 feet into the 30-foot setback, but will be 48 feet from Virginia Road, more separation with the public space than the existing old house. The very purpose of the building setbacks from the property line is to create a 30-foot space between a building and the public space and road. The elevated topography of the lot above the road provides more than the desired 30-foot separation from both the existing home and the new addition. Additionally, as the town right-of-way is generally 30 feet wide itself, but in this case, the right-of-way is 48 feet wide, it is providing more separation from the public space. Similarly, the north 10-foot setback is intended to provide separation from a neighbor's property line. The separation from the north property line seems inconsequential in that the right-of-way is 108 feet wide and 108 feet from the nearest neighbor's property line. There is only an 8-foot gravel drive in that right-of-way, and that is 48 feet from the edge of the Hitch property line. Therefore, the requested variances do not intrude into the intended spatial separations afforded by our zoning setbacks, and a strict application of the setbacks in this case would result in an unnecessary hardship on the applicant. B, and you can, either one of these, you can ask a question if you want to. B, the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, site, or topography. This lot is very peculiar and different from other Montreat lots. No boundary lines are parallel to another. No corner angles of the 5 boundary lines are the same, and one is a partial circle. The right-of-ways are very wide, range from 108 feet to 48 feet wide, and varying slopes. That, I think, covers the hardship, unusual conditions. C, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner, and that's correct. D, the variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. The variances requested allow a long-time, 60-year family to move to Montreat full-time, and when completed, will be consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance. E, the variance requested is the minimum variance that will make possible the requested use of the land, building, and structure. The existing home has only 2 proper bedrooms and very little closet or storage space. The existing home was completely upgraded by Richard Hitch's late father, Reverend Dooley Hitch. The solid cherry floors, upscale kitchen, and baths are in as new condition. Reverend Dooley Hitch made these immaculate improvements to his retirement years as a single man. Richard Hitch and his wife, Debbie, have extended family and grandchildren living 2 hours away and need more room for their generation. To avoid gutting much of the existing home and adding needed space, their plans are to preserve what is now perfect but too small and add space without harming what is existing. Mrs. Hitch has very little closet space and which barely works for vacation use, but not for full-time living. The new closet storage space will address this need. The new addition is so important for their children and grandchildren to be able to share Montreat's magic with them, and the addition is designed to preserve the function and views of the existing while adding the needed sleeping and living space for full family living. The last item, the variance is not a request to permit a use of land, building, or structure which is not permitted in the applicable zoning district, and that, of course, is true. Are there any questions about any of these?
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Thank you for your
Wade,
thorough.
I would just ask that you request that the board ask the board if it's okay to submit into evidence your materials, including the materials you've passed out tonight.
I do respectfully request that you consider the materials I have given you tonight to help in your discussion, and call a point to that in the package that I gave you. It shows the little addition on that bump out here, and that's the existing house.
Mr. Burns, I think are we okay submitting these into, I don't know that we need a motion.
I move that we submit this as evidence.
Bill Shy has moved that we submit these into evidence. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Matt has said yes, has seconded that. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries.
I do have a question.
Please.
You used the term.
Can you speak in the mic,
Yes.
please? You
You've
might
used
want to
the
pull
term
up.
perfect twice. Is that an architectural term, or is that just a statement of value about how nice.
That is the family's evaluation of the existing resident. It's perfect for them. It was perfect for his father, but it's not what they need as they move here full
So
time.
it's not an architectural term
No.
or a category. I just,
I doubt there's ever been a perfect architect. Many who thought they were, some who think they are, but I doubt any of us ever have been.
but perfect in the sense of complete.
Yes,
And doesn't need to be touched
exactly.
unnecessarily because, okay.
Additional questions?
I don't have a question for Wade. I have a question for you, Kayla. So do we need to move on from that, or can I ask it now?
I think you can just ask it.
Okay, I'm looking at what Wade has got here, and the fact that there's 44 feet as the variance. Well, to begin with, does the variance
44 feet from the variance
from
corner.
the variance point to
to the-
where he wants to build? Yes.
Yeah.
Is the variance goes from the edge of the road or the middle of the road?
Neither.
The
So
right of way.
the variance in this case, a variance itself is a general term that's requesting relief from the zoning ordinance. What Mr. Burns is requesting, the variance he's requested, is relief from the setback requirement. Setbacks are measured from the structure to the property line. So in this case, you can see, and I'm looking at this is what Wade, Mr. Burns had submitted today, and I believe not exactly this drawing, but a similar one was included in your packets. So in this drawing, what it is showing, the property line is the solid line that you see on the other side of, there's like this line with little dots on it. It's on the other side of that. So when we talk about a setback, that's measured from that solid line to the building. So the distance, what? Oh, Josh, can you pull up slide number 4, please, on the PowerPoint? I think this might help. The 44 feet that Mr. Burns is showing on here is from the building to the edge of the pavement.
Right.
So you can see in this slide that the required setback is 30 feet. So that's what the ordinance says. That's the distance that all new structures need to be from the property line is 30 feet.
All right, so that answers my question, I think, because I couldn't understand, I didn't realize that there wasn't a standard for the amount of feet in a setback. I thought it was so many feet from the center of the road.
No, so so the setback, there is a standard, and it's based on the zoning district that you are in and the type of use that you have. So for this zoning district, this property is located in the R2 zoning district. On the southern and eastern sides of the lot, a structure must be 30 feet from the property line. So in Montreat, the property lines don't necessarily run along the edge of the pavement. So you can see in this plat that the property line shown in that solid black is not directly against the pavement.
It is next to the right-of-way. The right-of-way is
The right-of-way is outside of, yeah, right. But I think sometimes people think that, you know, where the pavement ends, that's where the property starts, and that's not the case in Montreat. Does that answer your question, Murray?
Right.
Yeah, I was confused about that, and I couldn't understand why there would be 44 feet for a variance in between, and you've explained it very well. I got it.
I think, Wade, maybe if you want to talk about what these different distances are, that might be helpful to the board on this diagram.
One of your issues is equity and justice and, you know, for the community and so forth. And so you're looking at these setbacks to sort of protect you from an intrusion of the neighbor and so forth. So this is merely to show that this particular unique property is so far away from any neighbor that the concept and purpose of the setbacks is more than satisfied even with the variance, because the closest property line on the north side is 118 feet away, and then the closest on the east or south side is 75 or 85 feet away from the requested addition. So it's way in excess of what you would expect these setbacks to provide you.
But our issue is the property line. No,
Correct.
I understand.
That's
that-
right.
That you got all of
Oh, yeah.
Siberia is outside of that, so there's a lot of space. But what we're just worried about here, the encroachment on the setback of 30 feet from the property line, right? That's what
Exactly.
we're negotiating here.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Burns, I have a couple of observations, one, and maybe questions. I'm looking at finding of fact number 2, where it says,
Hardship results from conditions.
peculiar to the property, and you mentioned that this has peculiarities to this property, unlike other properties, I think you said in Montreat.
Yes.
And we're considering particularly properties in the neighborhood around this house. And so, Kayla, could you bring up that piece that shows kind of lot sizes and
Josh, can you pull up Buncombe County GIS, please, and navigate to the subject property?
Okay, so I'm looking at a lot of lots that are kind of around this particular lot in question. The lot below it looks like a tornado or a teardrop, or I don't know what we would call that. And we're seeing a number of various shaped and sized lots that are not, even the lot beside it is kind of like a 5-sided lot. And so I'm just trying to understand how you would argue that this lot is different from the neighborhood lots around it, because it seems to me to be very similar to the neighborhood lots around it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and the answer is because the purpose of doing the lot is what is sort of standard and what's normal. In that particular graphic, you can see that a lot of our lots aren't anywhere near standard or whatnot, but each is different from another. And so each of the hook the hook house and then on Louisiana, the little egg-shaped thing down to the left, those lots, all of those are very peculiar, and quite frankly, really would come into this exact same category. They're unique to themselves and would deserve considerations, because you just don't have square lots in which the 30 feet and the 15 feet and the 10 feet will all give everybody equity of the spaces between them. And so you're looking for, does granting this variance give this homeowner an advantage that others wouldn't have, because they're closer to a neighbor than you'd want them to be, or something like that. And so the purpose is easily met. It's a matter of the technical thing of, is there harm from this 6-foot 6-inch of encroachment into the 30-foot setback by the corner of that new addition?
I'm trying to understand, as I look at this, that in this finding of fact, we're trying to determine whether the hardship is different from other contiguous neighbors around it. And you, I think, just made the case that that hardship is not different from other neighbors. Other neighbors have the same issue that this lot has. Did I understand you correctly?
If you look at results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography.
But in relationship to its neighboring properties, not just it by itself.
No, I think it's conditions that are peculiar to the property in Montreat. So there are about 600 houses here.
I think we're interpreting it maybe perhaps a little differently, and how we define the neighboring properties would vary. But just looking at the neighborhood, I'm just making an observation that this property is very similar to other properties very close by. And in that way, it is not a particular hardship any different from any of the other neighboring properties. That's the case I'm trying to make. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
No, I think each has its own separate hardships because
Yeah.
of the shape.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a square peg and a round. One has a square peg, one has a triangle, a circle, a triangle, and they're all peculiar
Yeah.
to deal with. And so each might be begging for a variance and for their particular reasons. And this
Yeah.
one, as Kaylee showed you, is not as steep as other lots. And those lots adjacent had much steeper
Right,
topography.
exactly.
This one was a more gradual topography.
Yeah.
So they're all so unique. You've got to look at that one and say, this is not within standard what you'd expect with setbacks.
Yeah.
And so because it's quasi-judicial, you're not trying to take the Supreme Court, you're trying to, what's reasonable here? And what is reasonable, can it fit within these conditions? And my years on this board here in Atlanta,
Well,
this was an easy one.
Could I go to a second question
Yes.
that I have? Thank you for your help, at least your understanding of that. As I look at, I think it's finding of fact number 5, it says, is this the minimum variance that's being requested? And so I'm noticing on the west side of the property line, you could actually move this new proposed building, you could move it to the west to be on the property line a little bit and thereby reduce the variance that you're requesting on the southeast side, the 6.5-foot variance, if you move that that new building over to the property line.
Or to the 10-foot setback line, you mean?
Right.
To the setback line.
Closer to
Yes,
that,
thank you,
yes.
thank you, that's
So
clear.
if you
What
move-
what kind of problem would that cause to
If you
move the property?
moved it, say that's 3 feet, whatever it is.
Yep.
If you moved it 3 feet closer to that neighbor's house, that's the only neighborhood that's got something coming closer to them. And so you look at it, equity and what's fair and better in interest of everybody, then you've got all that space on the other side, and so you give them that extra 3 feet in addition to the 10 feet they're guaranteed they should have.
But we're not talking about the neighbor's house, we're talking about as it relates to this setback for this particular property. And so and a minimum setback is what we're asking, not what we would like or what the neighbor would like, or we're asking what's the minimum setback. And so my question is, if we move that property over to the property setback line and gain 3 feet, we would reduce the amount of the setback of the variance that would be asked for on the southeast corner.
You could do that if you thought that was important and it made an improvement in the community.
Well, it just is following the hardship issue in number 5 below where it says the minimum setback, which is what we're advocating for.
It would create a hardship in that the architect is, or whoever designed,
Mike. Your own, just, your
it
own.
designed it.
Pick it up.
That's the way the design was, and it would create a hardship because you'd have to move the whole thing over, or you'd have to lose part of the house to get it over.
I'm sorry, Bill.
Well,
Help
if you
me
look
understand
at
what
it-
you're talking about. Are you talking, I'm talking about this
Yeah.
building right here?
Yeah,
Moving it over to the left?
yes, that you would then have to move, if you're going to, if you're doing that to cut out the variance, that's the triangular piece to the right, you'd move it over, you'd have to slide the whole thing over, which would affect the way the building has been designed. And so that does create a hardship. And this doesn't seem to have any impact on anything.
This building, I mean, what we're trying to do
I
is
see what you're doing.
determine whether this building can we achieve this building with a minimum required setback. There's no building built yet. We're in the design phase. And so we're just asking, can we reduce this setback this variance by moving the building over to the property line, to the setback line? That's the question I'm trying to address.
Sure, and
Can
let
we
me
do
ask the
that?
lawyer, do we need to consider that if with this variance we would fit within it? Do we need to change the design of the building?
So I think that it's up to the board.
Right.
I think it's up to the board to try and figure out where the balance is here. Certainly you're does speak to this needs to be, the variance requested is the minimum variance that will make possible the requested use for land, building, or structure. So I think it's up to this board to balance, was the architect's decision to place the house where it was placed reasonable in these circumstances?
Yeah.
And this condition, I don't think exists in a vacuum. There's also, the board can take into account aspects of the decision that were designed to make substantial justice occur, right? So I think that it's up to the board to make those determinations and come up with that balance. I do not think this board would be legally required to move this property over to the setback line, though I think it is a fair question to ask the architect why the house was placed here and maybe not exactly on that line. I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, yeah. And as I understand, Mr. Burns, you're saying the primary reason that you would advocate for that as the architect, are you the architect? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, would be to give more space to your neighboring house.
It's additional space to the only neighbor that the
Yeah.
house is close to, number one. It's also following the path of water and stormwater. So we don't want to crowd that little space as the water comes down from the north. Then you're giving more room for vegetative cover to be helping slow the cloudburst, frog strangling rains that we get sometime in the summertime.
Wade, let me ask you something along the same lines, a little different perspective, but also to do with the design. If you're looking at the proposed building, there's a hallway with something that says HP. I don't know what HP is.
Heat pump.
Okay. Why?
That the survey put what's an existing heat pump sits there.
Okay, I just didn't know what that was. But is there any reason that that hallway has to be so long? Can you not put the house closer, the addition closer to the actual house? I know you had said something about trying to save the views and all of that, but I'm wondering if that couldn't have been a possibility, because it seems to me that if you pushed it back 7.5 feet from what I'm reading here, you wouldn't have a problem with this variance.
You could do that, but then you have taken the views of both components and made it more like an enclosed alley rather than a court space. And so,
And that's because I had read that you were concerned about the views, but I don't know how the board is going to vote. We're still talking about everything, but it just seems to me that if there was any question at all, that would be the easiest way to do it, is just to push the whole structure back. And yeah, you might lose some views, but you don't have that many views at that house anyway. So I'm just curious about that. That's just one of my questions when I was looking at it.
well, my specialty has been what I called architecture between the buildings. And I was sent all over the country by the American Institute of Architects to speak to architects' conventions about this, about how you create the space between the buildings to be as successful and magical as the buildings that we're designing. And so that three-dimensional space is my area of expertise. And so I have put it as close as I felt like worked visually to not screw up the experience from either of the two components.
I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. But
so-
I'm just thinking that if there's a question, if the board was going to say, no, you can't have it because it's not going to work, that would be a reasonable thing to do, is just to move it back.
And I think the word reasonable is the most important one here. What is reasonable with regard to function? What's reasonable with regard to how people are going to use it? And what is reasonable as it would impact the neighbors who would have a concern in this? And so I don't think any of us would think it reasonable to take something away from somebody else's property when it wasn't going to cost us anything, wasn't going to hurt us at all to provide such relief as the ordinance allows us to provide.
I have a question to piggyback on that.
Please.
And that is, as I look at it, and it could just be my eyesight is so bad looking at this reduction of the plan, the fireplace or the chimney that is in the new structure, the measurement to the wall of the house is 31 feet from the property line. But that chimney extends out to the south more than that, and unless the chimney is only 1 foot protruding from the building line, and I imagine it's not, it's a little bit more than that, it's actually extending into the 30-foot setback. Is that right?
Not as it's been designed.
No.
That's a 2-foot deep chimney, and
Well,
so
when I do
that's-
31 minus 2, I get 29.
The 30 feet is to the chimney. On that,
Oh, okay, well, yeah, the way I read this, it was to the wall, to the actual building. I mean,
Matt, if you
To the
look at
chimney.
the screen, Josh has zoomed in, you can see it a little bit better.
all right, that's still clear as mud to me, because that 30-foot line goes all the way to the side of the building.
It touches the corner. He's proposing it at the setback line.
Oh, well, it just shows I don't know how to read architectural drawings. I'm glad there's architects in the world, because I couldn't do this. All right, but to Marty's point, if you ooched it back another 2 feet, you wouldn't have a problem, but apparently there's not a problem anyway. Okay, I'll back off.
Any other observations, questions?
Have you done any, you mentioned water, and that's a prevailing problem in Montreat anywhere. Between the property lines, do you have any water going down that area? Because that's a concern too. Having had a house with major water problems, I would not want to have my house closer to any water that's flowing north, south, whatever, I
Right.
think. And that's my concern. I see that you can gather there's I think it's 10 feet and 12.8 feet if you go all the way to from the property line, the adjoining property line on the west to the house corner versus, and now you're getting to where you can't read it. That's not helping. Go back to the other part where you were. Okay. You can see the 2.8. That's from the property line to the actual house corner now. Okay?
12.8.
Right. Exactly.
the setback.
The only thing you
It's the setback.
gather, yeah, I understand. But you're only 10 feet away from that setback. So I don't know if there's any water concern between this property 179 and 180 next door adjoining. I wouldn't want to move my house closer to that problem, especially since we know water is a big problem up here.
Do we have any evidence of water flowing between the west side of this building, the proposed building, and to the west anywhere?
Yes, you have, depending on the level of thunderstorm, frog strangler to whatever, you have, after an hour or 2 hours, you get sheet water. Where the ground's taking nothing, you get sheet water. And we have this two times in summertime. So you're going to have water that comes down, and what's at risk is the existing house.
Yeah.
And the existing house sort of protects this proposed addition. The proposed addition is move that extra couple of feet away from the western property to give more room for that water in these frog stranglers to get on through. Because as that comes down towards Virginia where it heads toward Louisiana, it becomes a significant amount of water. And that goes down on behind the eastern side, houses like Sleepy Hollow and so forth. There's a little stream there.
But,
So-
but, go ahead.
So if the property the proposed addition is moved to the setback line to 2.8 feet, you're going to have to do water mitigation or not, either way,
It'll
as it is
increase-
now.
It will increase the stormwater problem.
Right, right. But you're going to have to do water mitigation anyway, because that's only two.
Yes, the ordinance requires what the ordinance requires. And for the house we live in now, which is a small house on a quarter-acre lot, we capture 3,000 gallons of water in the rain in underground tanks that are slowly dispersed over 3.5 days to take that 3,000 gallons off the
It's a
surge.
common known problem here in Montreat, for
Yes.
sure. Any sloped tier. Is there other questions?
Yes.
Please.
As far as the stormwater goes, I'm looking at the stormwater map that we have here, and Dooley's house is significantly higher than that.
And it's 5 feet.
So you're
Okay.
worried about water coming down from the North Carolina Terrace side that would damage their house? Is that what you're saying? I don't.
Yes, yes. So water comes down from North Carolina Terrace. It bypasses the Hester house
Yeah.
because there's a big storm drain there. That when Hester was vice mayor, it got put in. And so that carried the water coming down from the old Boggs house. It carried the water around and dumped it on the Clark West house, which is now a vacant lot, which I only discovered after the fact, and we saw this water coming down. And so we've got an amount of stormwater that comes down there. And so that creates an impact on this. And one of the things that I have designed into this is that when this house is looking at stormwater management, that one of our considerations to see if we can't assist in what's coming from North Carolina by taking that into retention facility.
Well, I'm just
Here.
curious about it, Wade, because I hear what you're saying loud and clear, and I know that things can happen, especially with a lot of rain like we had with Helene. But even after Helene, I was up there. I don't remember seeing any problems with water up there, just mainly trees that were down. I'm just curious about that more than anything else. But I did have one other question that I wanted to ask you about the house itself and its design. And I do understand that women need to have a large closet, but Debbie is asking for an 18 by 7.5 foot closet. Is that right?
Begging is a word.
Do you not think she could do with a 17-foot closet instead of 18?
Mary, I've only been married a little shy of 20 years. And no, I can get by with less. But
Well,
I'm,
and so can I. That's why I'm asking, because that is an enormous closet. And it's, I really don't have a problem with it poking into the setback lines as far as my emotional response is, but it does poke into the setback line. And I'm just wondering if she needs it that badly that she can't cut a foot off of it.
well, it's not a matter of clothes. It's a matter of the original houses, the original house. Original houses
Can I just,
basically had no closets.
I think we're getting into the personal aspects of.
Well, I don't mean to get
Right.
into the personal aspects.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do is I'm looking at the design of it. And this, what's not making sense to me, Wade, is what I could see just from looking at this and nothing else is that it would be probably easily to sort of move that 6-foot setback, that spot that's in the setback, and a foot up here. And I'm just interested in the design. And I'm not going to go on about it because I don't want to waste time. But I'm just looking at it and thinking there must have been a better way to do this so that we wouldn't be here with this. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Chair, may I interrupt just briefly?
Please.
I want to point out something from a School of Government resource about when these questions do butt right up against to how a piece of property is being used, and then the personal circumstances of the applicant. And that is a tricky thing to try to navigate. So I think we've got some good guidance here from the School of Government
Yes,
that I'd like
thank
to
you.
share. Hardships that result from personal circumstances may not be the basis for granting a variance. The board is looking at the nature of the property and the land use ordinance, not the nature of the applicant and their circumstances. Bringing an elderly parent to live with the family, for example, is a change in personal circumstances, not a condition peculiar to the property.
Thank you.
So I think that to the extent that the board can focus on the practical implications of the building itself, rather than what's going to be going on inside the building, I think is a safer place to stay.
Thank you. That's helpful. Is there any other questions of clarification? I'm wanting to move to the statements of fact and our own thinking about that.
Okay. Yep. So move, go. You're looking at me, I don't know.
Typically, we talk about closing the evidentiary hearing, and then we have a conversation just among the board members, among us, or we can leave the evidentiary hearing open so that Mr. Burns could perhaps address a question that might come up in our thinking, in our deliberation. And I think I'd like to leave it open and not close it, if that would be, I think that would be best for us. And Mr. Burns, if you would like to sit down, or whatever you need to do, you can stand there if you'd like. Take the mic with you. But we're going to now deliberate about this. And if we have a question, that we will come to you and address that to you.
Very
You
good.
can help us. But we want to let you have a little bit of rest there for a minute.
I'll give you just a couple extra feet of space between us.
Okay. How would, let's begin by just going through these and talking through these 5 findings of fact. 6 findings of fact, I guess it is.
Yep.
This first one, do we have any evidence in support of or against the unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance? It shall not be necessary to demonstrate in the absence of the variance no reasonable use can be made of the property. Does anybody want to speak in favor of that or against that? I don't know how to make that any clearer.
Are we speaking in favor, or are we simply?
Both.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's, okay.
Yeah. This is always a hard one for me to understand because the language, in the absence of variance, no reason, it's just confusing language.
Well, do you guys remember from our training when we talked about identifying what the hardship is? So I just want to bring you guys back to that when we identify what the hardship is from our training. That might be helpful.
Well, if I were reading this and it says strict application, it should be necessary to demonstrate in the absence of a variance, no reasonable use can be made of the property. And if that is the strict application, then that's not I don't see a hardship.
Does anybody agree that there's a hardship here?
May I jump in? I do.
Yeah, please.
So ordinances and laws do change from
Yeah.
over time, and I want to point out I'm reading from that same School of Government article that I believe was included in the packet you received, and so I'm on page 2 of 4 there. This was provided, right? Okay. So under old statutes, many jurisdictions applied the standard that the applicant must show that there is no reasonable use of the property without a variance. Under current statutes, that stringent standard is no longer allowed. A property owner can prove unnecessary hardship even if the owner has some reasonable use of the property without the variance.
Okay, so we would say that there is potential reasonable use without the variance.
So,
Is that right?
What this is saying is This is saying that it looks like it aligns with your ordinance. A property owner can prove an unnecessary hardship even if the owner has some reasonable use of the property without a variance. This is just showing, Kayla might have something to add.
Yeah, I want to point you guys to page 75 of the quasi-judicial handbook. The last sentence, a property owner may establish an unnecessary hardship even if that owner would still have some reasonable use of the property without the variance.
So the same wording, it's on
Yeah,
page
so
7.
they will have, we will have, the property owner can have reasonable use of this property without, I'm sorry.
So I think.
With or without?
A property owner can have reasonable use of their property and still have a hardship.
Okay.
So reading from that same, this is actually from
Right.
a separate section. When they talk about, is your hardship peculiar to the property? Such peculiar characteristics might arise, for example, from location of the property, size or shape of the lot, or topography of water features on the site. Imagine that a lot narrows dramatically towards the front yard. Let's see. Well, I'm not reading from the handbook. I thought I had an example here. Yep. Narrows dramatically towards the front yard and where the side yard setbacks prohibit the property owner from building an addition. The hardship, not being allowed to build an addition, flows from the strict application of the ordinance, the setback, and is peculiar to the property because of the shape of the lot. A variance may be appropriate if the owner presents evidence to show she meets all of the standards. This is again from page 2 of 4 of the article we provided.
So is that saying that, that there is a hardship because of the peculiar variance widths and all of that stuff to this property? Is that considered a hardship?
If the board finds that such evidence is presented, it very well could be.
So no hard fact about that. I mean, there's nothing that says yes or no. We have to decide.
Because that's the nature of the quasi-judicial decision. You guys are looking at each case individually based on the evidence presented.
Yeah.
So do you find that there's a hardship? Do you find that there are peculiar conditions that create the hardship? I think there's another part of the quasi-judicial handbook that I just want to read to you guys. And it's on page 74. It's the first paragraph under unnecessary hardship resulting from strict application. Unnecessary hardship must result from the strict application of the development regulation. All regulation involves some level of necessary hardship and convenience shared by the entire community. To apply for a variance, an applicant must show that the hardship is unnecessary.
I think just to put a thought out there, that captured my imagination when I read it, and I've read that a dozen times this week, that this is a level of hardship that is similar to other properties around this property.
And will be.
And will be. And so I don't see it as an unnecessary hardship. I see it as a hardship that is an inconvenience more than anything else, that's equivalent to the hardships or the inconvenience that would be true in other properties nearby.
I think of this differently than you. This is just
Okay,
on language,
please.
and I want to defer to you.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at, given all of our setback rules and all of just a huge amount of additional space between this structure and any other, because of the peculiar nature of the lot, not even taking into account the topography, which also affects this, at least on the south corner side, that the strict application of the rules we have does create a hardship. I mean,
Good point, yeah.
But it's because
Helpful.
of the overall environment and how we're dealing with a huge amount of additional space. It's not going to affect, well, I mean, the only thing we're dealing with is the property line versus where the structure's going to be. We've got so much additional space But we're not talking about right-of-way thing. We don't even get close to any right-of-ways on Virginia Road or anything. So I see it, I mean, I think you could think of it either way.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of it is that is it necessary for us to deny the variance because of the general rules
Yeah.
we have? And it's sort of a burden of argument anyway, if not proof, that we'd have to say it is necessary for us to keep the rules where they are and no variance can be done. So I think there is a hardship here if we aren't at least open to the flexibility about our strict rules, our setback rules.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you.
I agree,
It's
I agree
helpful.
with that. I think that's very
That-
wise.
That moves me a little bit. That helps me. Thank you for that.
It helps me too, because I'm really struggling.
Yeah,
So I appreciate that, Matt.
yeah.
I just want to remind you guys too that, you guys can look at each piece separately. There's 2 requests under the same application. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about 1 foot.
I'm not either.
Okay, can we move to number 2?
Yes.
Sure.
And I'm not going to ask for chapter and verse here right now, but maybe we'll take this all together as a single vote, so we'll see. But the hardship results from conditions peculiar to the property. And I, a minute ago, asked a question, is this property peculiar, different from the other neighboring contiguous properties around it? Or is this property in a similar situation to many of the other, not all of the other, but many of the other properties around it? Is its peculiarity granting or is its peculiarity moving us toward a hardship case because they're suffering in some way that neighbors aren't suffering?
Well, be careful here because I'm real reading what we have to decide on. It says peculiar to the property such as location. It doesn't say compared to your neighbors.
Right.
That's something you're interjecting, and that's where I'd say, forget that. We're not talking about the
Help
next
us
line.
with that. I think it does, we are talking about our neighborhood.
I think we're
You-
going to have to take it when it comes up.
Yeah.
You are. So when you're talking about the peculiar conditions, you're comparing them to the conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general.
That's
what?
not what it says.
Hardship or something?
It needs
No, it
to
doesn't
have
say
more
it in
detail.
this
Right,
finding
right.
of
So
fact.
the conditions themselves cannot be common or should not be common to the.
Okay,
So-
so that
so-
means
so
you
you're-
can't take into consideration.
Sorry.
Your ordinance specifically says that hardships resulting from personal circumstances as well as hardships resulting.
Wait a minute, that's not what I'm reading.
Yeah, and so this is, you may see some of the guidance documents we give you will explain these concepts differently, but they are all concepts that exist under North Carolina law.
Those are not the same.
Your specific ordinance says hardships result from conditions, a required finding in order to grant a variance is that the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Hardships resulting from personal circumstances, as well as hardships resulting from conditions that are common to the neighborhood or the general public, may not be the basis for granting a variance. So it does reference neighborhoods. It also talks about the general public. There's something that may be instructive from the article, What is a Hardship and When is it Unnecessary, that we provided to the board. This is what the article says. Hardships result from personal circumstances may not be the basis for granting a variance. The board is looking at the nature of the property and the land use ordinance, not the nature of the applicant or his circumstances. And I'm reading something I've already read to you. I'm sorry. If you look under the peculiar to the property section, the unnecessary hardship must be peculiar to the property, not general to the neighborhood or community. Such peculiar characteristics might arise, for example, from location of the property, size or shape of the lot, or topography or water features on the site. Imagine that a lot narrows dramatically towards the front yard and where the side yard setbacks prohibit the property owner from building an addition. The hardship, not being allowed to build an addition, flows from the strict application of the ordinance, the setback, and is peculiar to the property because of the shape of the lot. A variance may be appropriate if the owner presents evidence to show she meets all of the standards. By contrast, a variance is not the appropriate remedy for a condition or hardship that is shared by the neighborhood or the community as a whole. Consider the same narrowing lot. If all of the houses on the street shared that hardship, a variance would not be appropriate. I believe that this envisions a grid-type setup where all of the lots are narrowing. So I think that that's something that you can factor into your calculations.
Well, one thing I think about for sure, Kayla, is what you were saying, that we have to take each one independently, because every lot practically in Montreat has some weirdness about it. And I don't really want to say that it's, judge it by the rest of the neighborhood. I want to judge it independently. But I know. I'm really struggling with this. I'm having a hard time.
Let's move to the next one. I don't know that we're going to get clarity as we need it for each one of these. The hardship did not result from the actions taken by the applicant or the property owner. Would anybody disagree with that?
No. Not me.
The property owner did not create these conditions. We all in agreement with that? Yeah. The variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. Can we agree on that one?
Yes.
Yes. Matt?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. The variance request is the minimum variance that will make possible the requested use of the land, building, or structure. How are we thinking about that?
Given the design, it's pretty minimum, and you're really only talking about the 6 feet over here. It's the 6 feet over here and the 2 feet over here. And I don't see that it really would impact it.
Anyone else?
This is where I think that I have a little bit that it's fuzzy. What's fuzzy to me is if we move this same structure and design 2 feet anyway, but let's just say north and west, then instead of being 6 feet protruding into the setback, it would only be protruding 2 feet. Couldn't you say that that would be the minimum variance? Now, we've heard testimony that there's an aesthetic architectural consideration to having the distance of the new structure be a certain way from the old one. So that's why we have that. And I'm only looking at the southern thing. I think the northern one is minimal and quite minimal. But I'm not so sure that 6 feet is just as minimum a variance as 2 feet would be. It's about understanding the minimum, what do we mean by a minimum variance to make possible the requested use. Now, maybe the requested use is exactly just what we've been given, and so that's all we've got to work with. We can't go tell an architect how to be an architect. We can only take the plan presented to us and see if that works. We certainly have an understanding of the use needs that are of this proposed structure. And we have input on aesthetic considerations from one side. Does that affect what minimum variance would be, though? That's my question. I'm just open. I haven't resolved that part myself. I want help from the others on the board.
Yeah.
Can aesthetics even be a consideration?
So when you're looking at how a building is built, I think that is the realm of expert testimony. We were talking about architecture, and we were talking about taking in facts and evidence that you need to have someone who is an expert in the field. For this board, you are tasked with looking at the evidence that is put in front of you and received. When you have an architect giving you evidence about a certain fact or opinion or how something should be built, really that evidence is the expert evidence in front of you, unless there is another architect who presents contradictory testimony. It puts the board in a difficult position if you have an expert saying something is okay and there is no expert on the other side giving contravening testimony.
That helps me with just what my dilemma was.
My own read so far in the evidence that's been presented is that this is not the minimum setback that's been, that we could ask for. We could actually, and Mr. Burns, I'd be curious, could we ask you to work with a homeowner to move the building west to the setback line and potentially, as Maria said, move it north as well to reduce the amount of the variance that's being requested from 6.5 feet to whatever that would look like? Would you be able and willing to do that with and then come back with that presentation to us?
Before he does that, could I just raise a question? If you do that, you'd have to move where he's attached it to the house.
Right.
And you'd have to shorten the, shorten the space that goes out from the house to that first turn. And the testimony before us is that she has very little closet space that barely works for vacation use.
That's not what we're talking about.
Well, no, I know it. But this is why she needs all that. So I don't have a problem. I really don't. I think if you move it up, that just crowds it all together. And for what purpose?
You're moving just that building. That's not moving.
I know that. Sliding right up there. No, she's talking about this up here.
No.
Oh, I see. Okay, you're right. Okay, you're right.
Closet's not in this conversation.
Okay, got it.
But nothing
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would like to, my notes say that there was also testimony that on the west edge of the building, there were stormwater concerns, and that moving the building to the west would exacerbate a stormwater issue. And I don't think we've heard any evidence contradictory to that from anyone who would be certified as an expert. I think Kayla may be the only person in this room that we could certify as an expert in stormwater, other than potentially an architect. But I do want to remind the board that I do believe that evidence came in.
I hate to ask that. I hate to ask this, but that being the case, then I would like to see evidence presented to show that this is a stormwater concern, and no, I can't do that.
Wade is a licensed architect.
Right.
He is proxy. Wade is a professional who is able to make that, to present that evidence, and that evidence has been presented.
Yeah. Well, and that being the case, I just haven't been persuaded that that moving the building 2.5 feet would significantly cause a stormwater issue that can't be remedied with water control management in the development of that building in that lot.
Danny, how would you move it? Because you'd have to slide the whole thing over. That would affect it at the house front too. How would you move it 2.5 feet over?
I would shift it, the whole building as it is, 2.5 feet over, and then I would let the architect worry about the walkway between the two buildings.
Okay.
So that would be my, I guess that would be my opposition that I would like to see, for me to feel comfortable with the minimum setback the minimum variance being requested. I would like to see the building moved over.
Mr. Chair, I believe this makes your decision to leave the evidentiary phase open a very good one. I think that's a fair question to ask to the architect. You've got him standing here.
Thank you.
I think that's a fair question.
Yeah.
And I think, Wade, it might be helpful for, you and I have worked together for several years. So I know your background, it may be helpful for the board for you to speak to your stormwater management experience and designing the stormwater management systems, and in response to Danny's question.
Thank you.
Right. So we built our newest house our house we're living in Montreat at the edge of an ephemeral stream, meaning stormwater only. Graybeard Stream is 150 feet away. Graybeard Stream is now 15 feet lower than it was before the storm from the water that came through. In our case, we had an existing 4-foot culvert that brought water through on the top of our property and a 3-foot that took it out on the bottom. The difference between a 3-foot pipe and a 4-foot pipe, it reduces the capacity 56%. When you take 12 feet to handle a frog strangler, not to mention, forget Helene, a frog strangler, and you reduce it by 20%, or 2 feet, which is 20% or close to it, that can be not just the straw that breaks the camel back, but the bale of hay that turns the camel upside down. And so the more area you have to control the water, the better science it is. And so I have spent several years on the Planning Commission, as a former chair can attest, raising issues of the stormwater ordinance and how difficult it is to understand and how difficult it is to administer. But I built a house at the edge of a stream. Helene came down, and the house I built actually became a barrier keeping water from going into the stream bed. And it's how you design it and how you handle that. Took us 3 days before we could get out of our area because we were cut off by water. I understand stormwater pretty well. The house we sold was only 3 houses away from this. I watched the water come down from North Carolina to Virginia. I know how it gets away and where it hits, and it hits the north side of this property. And so this has been designed to take advantage of every opportunity we could to mitigate what happens when we get our major rains.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I really stand by the layout, the proportions between the two buildings, the considerations of the neighbors. And I think that one of those 7 provisions really is one that always guided us when I was sitting where you're sitting. The variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. So you have, most neighbors in Montreat have opinions. You don't have anyone opposing this. And where is it fair? Where does it sort of make sense? And what I've tried to lay out is what makes the most sense in this circumstance. To not mess up an existing house that's great as is, give them the space they needed with a minimal intrusion into the setbacks that are established somewhat arbitrarily, but they're there. And how does that impact that larger area is important. You have to look outside the, all the windows of the car before you turn. And so you've got to be aware of how far is it to the road, how far is it to where the public moves, how far is it to the neighbor's house. And this falls within the areas of common sense and reason. It makes sense. Just put where it makes sense to do. From the nights I lay awake, struggling, how do I create something that will work here? Put them too close together, you've sort of screwed up both of them. And so you give enough separation so it can be a little court out there and everything work. So I've given it my best, having already acknowledged there are no perfect architects.
Thank you.
I think it's a good
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, but it's on the property.
Could I point the board to Sorry.
To it. Oh, 61.
Asking the board to look at page 51.
Burden of evidence?
Burden of evidence, that is right. Fourth paragraph, third paragraph. If the applicant produces sufficient evidence that the standards have been met and no substantial evidence is presented to the contrary, the applicant is entitled to the approval being sought. In this situation, the board must approve the application. Once the applicant meets the burden of producing evidence that the applicable standards have been met, the burden shifts to any opponents to produce contrary evidence sufficient to show that the standards have not been met. This is Professor Lovelady saying what I tried to say in a much more succinct fashion.
You 51?
Page 51 of
And
this.
we looked at paragraph 3, and that's not what it's reading.
1, 2, 3. I was on paragraph. Yep, that's.
What's the paragraph?
It begins with if
What?
the applicant produces sufficient.
No? Oh, there.
You're up at 3.
Oh, you were counting, okay, it's 2, really.
If the applicant, okay, we were in the wrong paragraph, okay. Sorry.
And so that's where it is. I'm happy to read it one more time.
No, we can read it.
Mr. Chair, I have something I just would call an observation. I don't know what our next step is or whether we're there. And we do have to make the determination of have the evidence been presented where we need it. But it seems to me that what is proposed to us is a careful balance of several considerations. One being the distance, the setback distance to the property to the west, not encroaching on that necessarily. The frog strangler runoff consideration, a protrusion into the right-of-way in a place that affects nothing close by. And so maybe he was willing to spend 6 feet of our setback to do that, but it creates a balance. I can't speak, I mean, he's the expert on what's aesthetic or not. I think that's a little, well, it's not part of my observation. I'm just saying I think this is a balanced treatment of the multiple considerations that are present here, trying to be sensitive to each of those and not to take advantage of any one of them or say, oh, I'll leave it at that. I just think there's balance in what he's presented us.
Thank you.
of consideration.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is it too early to move for a vote? Or I don't know how you, this is my first
We're not
time.
through them all yet.
Okay.
We're not what?
We're not through all of the steps. I
We
think
got
you
more.
wanted to deliberate on all the steps, didn't you?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
We had to deliberate on all the steps in the special use permit, and we had to put findings of fact, and we had to put the kind of chapter and verse. I'm not seeing that as that each one of these statements of fact has to be approved. It can be voted together, and we can see if it's voted together, if we have enough to move forward to grant the variance if it's voted together.
Sure.
If it's not voted, if the vote fails, then we'll have to go back and look at each one individually. Does that seem like a way forward?
I have a
Okay.
question. Don't we have to vote on each one of those?
You can do them individually, or you can do them all as one.
But you got to have evidence for each one, right?
Excuse me. I agree with the way the chair put it. If this board finds that all of the conditions have been met, I think that there has been satisfactory deliberation and you've taken in evidence. If the board decides that something hasn't been met, I think this board is going to have to go back and state specifically why this application is being denied.
Okay, that's different. than what we-
Mr. Chair, I would make a
Fine, I
motion.
agree.
I would make a motion that the board consider that all the required standards of evidence have been met.
And grant both variances.
Well, and I didn't say grant the variances. I'm just talking about voted on are the evidentiary things met. And
And therefore grant the purpose of that.
Well,
would
it
be-
probably would be. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what that means. But what I'm really trying to do is just get to, there is a, yeah, all right, you're right.
Consensus.
I would like to move that we vote on the,
Hold on, I want to be sensitive. Are
Okay,
you
I'm
willing to
sorry.
let him make another motion, or do we need to follow up with?
Well, no one has seconded my motion, so it's just, it's not even necessarily real. I'm not trying to preclude doing it another way, but I thought this, if we can get this done with a one vote for all of the evidences, that
That's what
seems to
we're
use
hoping
less
to do.
time than going each one. If we
Right.
can't, if that fails, then we would go back and do the other.
That's exactly what we're hoping to do. Good. Okay?
I would just gently remind the board that Kayla has provided sample variance language on page 11 of the staff report, I believe.
Sorry, I didn't.
It is
pull
at the
that
very
up.
bottom, and it starts motion for decision.
on page what?
11. I'm also happy to hand this to anyone.
Would you hand that to Bill, since
I
he
don't have
wants
that.
to
I'd
make
like
the
to see
motion?
it.
He wants to move, or to Matt, either one.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I move
Here it comes.
that the board approve the variance request VA 2025-01
Need more glasses?
and 502 of the Montreat zoning ordinance to reduce the front setback requirement from 30 feet to 23.4 feet on the southern side of the subject property, and to section 502.8 of the Montreat zoning ordinance to reduce the side setback requirement from 10 feet to 9 feet on the northern side of the subject property for the purpose of expanding the existing dwelling on the subject property. So moved.
Is there a second?
Amen. Yes.
We have a motion made by Bill and a second by David.
Reverend David.
Yes, Reverend.
Is that true?
No. I'm sorry.
I didn't think it was. Gosh, and claiming that in public and everything. Okay.
For the record.
Any discussion?
Here you go, Jerry.
Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? There is no opposition to the motion, so the motion carries. The variances, both variances are granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Do we have anything else to do? Move to adjourn?
I think we are ready to move to adjourn. Do you have something, you guys are collaborating over there, something you want to say?
They're commiserating. This is the first time we've not done this. We've done each one of these.
No concerns, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry.
First time we.
Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Absolutely. So ordered. Whip.
You guys will be meeting in May. We do have we've received an application, so I will email the full board this, but while we were here, I figured I would just mention that you guys will be meeting May 22nd.
And I will remind you that I will probably be gone for 2 months. So just want to let you know.
Whoa, 2 months.
You haven't gotten permission.
Where are you going to go?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Somewhere out west. I don't know where.
Great.
We have a motion to adjourn from David and seconded by
Maury.
Mari. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, so ordered.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you, Wade. That's the first time we have ever done.
apologize, but
And I would tell you that we've been able to do that without going through each one.